Are we coming back? Okay, so are you ready for the last part of domain 7?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
more or less,
Yes.
yes.
We're almost there. We're almost done. So for tomorrow, we will have two more chapters, which will represent domain 8. And after this, practice, practice, and more practice. So once we complete this one, this chapter, we move to practice, and I highly recommend on you practicing in pairs now. So there's 5 of you. Figure it out. Figure out a way to go and to go online with each other and take at least one exam together, even in 3. Okay, because the different ways of thinking will help you sharpen your understanding of the material. Okay, so it's important to work together, not to deal with it alone. So as you saw that we were solving here questions, the group's discussion was very important for to deal and to learn about the different areas of maybe some of it that we figure it out ourselves, but maybe others remember or understand something else that can contribute to us. Okay, so figure out the pairs and the trio for your practice after this chapter, and I want to see you practice and practice. You're gonna have a lot of time for practicing, and that's good. That's really good. All right. So chapter 19, the objective behind chapter 19 is, at the end of the day, there is a crime that took place, okay, cybercrime that took place. The incident didn't just happen from nowhere. It could have happened from natural disasters, as we saw, but it also most likely, most of the areas is man-made. So maybe by mistake, maybe deliberately, maybe some hacking group or even opponent country targeted our organization or maybe even country. And we need to deal with the fact that the incident took place and probably crime was committed against our organization, our people, the people that we serve, the individuals that rely on us with their private information, and other businesses that rely on our business to work, to properly work and conduct our own business. So for that reason, we have chapter 19. And chapter 19, it's really about bringing those bad people to justice. So let's look at the source of, where those crimes can start from. The crime or any that we see, military intelligence, business attack, financial attack, and so on and so forth. However, there is this interesting last 2, which I want to emphasize for a second, because we totally understand the first 4. The grudge attack and the thrill attack are interesting because those type of attacks, the grudge, someone wants to get back at us. Someone has, bad memory or bad experience with our organization. They want to get back at us. They want to pay back. So that's a feeling of someone. Also, a thrill is also a feeling. And the reason I emphasize these 2 is because ISC also emphasized them as well. So the questions, scenario-based questions that will go to the source or the root cause of the attack, which will eventually become a crime, can potentially be based on the feelings. Okay, somebody's against political movements, against our organization for some reason, some wrong employee, or even terminated employee, fired employee, is trying to get back at us and embarrass our management and organization and hurt the reputation of the company. So, talking about crimes, expect these questions to touch past employees or rejected employees, rejected candidates. I've seen that as well. There was a candidate with your company they went through the interview, they didn't get the job, and now they write a malicious code against you. Okay, that's the crime, right? At the end of the day, for all crimes, what we want to do is we want to collect the right evidence, and if we want to get to court with it, we need to collect the evidence in such way that it will be reliable, competent, and material. So let me ask you a question. How can an evidence be competent? An evidence sounds to me like an evidence. How can an evidence in court be competent? Can you give me an example of an evidence?
With gun.
Computer crime? What's that?
Computer crime, a log.
Log. Perfect. Can a log be competent? It can be reliable, right? If I can prove that this is the right log of the right system at the right time, it can also be material because I have the log. But how can a log be competent? Carlo, care to try?
This is what I was thinking also, because actually, if the logs 100% prove that actually this was your computer, for example, they could not necessarily prove that you have been behind your computer during this time of the event.
So you're talking about reliability. You're not talking about competence or competency. Competency is, the ability to be reliable. The ability, a log doesn't have the ability. A log is either reliable or not. So what is a competent evidence? Let me share the explanation here with you. Competency is related to people, and since we are looking at people, process, and technology, the obvious evidence that you, Shachar, provided was the obvious evidence ISC wants you to think about. They want you to think about the computers and the logs, and I have a video, caught them red-handed, doing this, doing that. Competency of an evidence is actually the competency of the testimonial that a witness provides. So the competency of your witness, because witnesses are also evidence.
But how in computer crime, sometimes you don't have evidence. You don't have.
I agree. No, totally agree. We're not talking about the bulletproof, lawsuit. We're talking about what needs to be in place for the evidence to be that evidence that we want to present in court, right? So for the evidence to be presentable in court and admissible in court, it needs to be reliable, competent, and material. So any technical evidence can only be reliable and material. A human evidence, a witness, okay, a witness that says, yes, I was sitting next to Chen as Chen hacked the mainframe of Deutsche Bank. Okay, that evidence, that testimony of that witness becomes an evidence. And the question we asked about this is how competent is that witness sitting next to Chen, actually understanding what Chen is doing? This guy has no idea what he's looking at the screen. I was, writing a letter, writing an email to my employees. I was not hacking the mainframe. However, if that witness is competent or proven competent, and we can show that this guy has experience with mainframes and he knows how those screens look and how those commands look like and what the meaning behind them, then no one can contradict his competency. So
yeah, but Chen might be sitting in North Korea and we don't have any knowledge about what he's doing and what he's capable of.
But you can bring a professional as a witness to say, in this case, this is what is done. Okay, if this action is taken, then this is what is done. So every witness that you bring to court needs to be competent. And that's what I was trying to emphasize here, okay? So people will need to be competent. Every other piece of evidence will need to be reliable and material alone, right? Okay, so as we mentioned, the evidence can be real, consistent of actual objects, documentary evidence, right, of written documents, and testimonial evidence consists of verbal or written statements by the witnesses that we mentioned just now. So in order for you to conduct the computer investigation, you must now have a possession of equipment, software, data, anything that can serve your case in court. Okay, so you need to have a possession. And you also must acquire the evidence without modifying it. So integrity controls are big in chapter 19. Integrity, if I'm to write one principle for security over chapter 19 in your book, it's integrity. Anything related to integrity, hash algorithms, FIM, file integrity monitoring, integrity monitoring in general, in my SIM system, any file or attribute change, I don't want to have that. Volatile memory has to be connected to the power, so it will not be changed. So anything related to integrity that we've seen throughout the CISSP will play a good role of controls here. Okay, so the state of mind in chapter 19 and going to court with these crimes is all about integrity. All right, are we good there? If we cannot have possession of the evidence that we want to present in court, we need to get possession. And first, we can always ask for that evidence from the accused party. Remote possibility that this will take place. So that's where we go to court and we get a subpoena. We get a subpoena because we want to call the subject to surrender the evidence. Okay, that company, that person, to surrender that evidence. With a subpoena, they must follow the subpoena. However, if they don't do that, then we can get a search warrant where we call the police and we get a possession of that evidence using the police, and this is the most common one that is being used. Also, another way of obtaining possession of evidence is by running either an interview or interrogation. So as you can see here in this slide, interview is being done in peaceful manner with both parties that want to cooperate with each other. So let's say that I'm calling an employee that might not be a witness of, I don't know, some cyber crime that took place within our workplace. Okay, we call them to HR. We don't interrogate them. For interrogation to take place, I must have someone that is dealing with law enforcement in the room. So to run an interrogation against an employee, okay, you have to have a police officer in the office, in the perimeter. All right, the police officer is actually conducting the interrogation. Interrogation is a bad thing. Investigation or interview, an interview is something that happens between colleagues. And the CISO or the CISSP can be part of an interview, but you cannot be part of the interrogation. Your part is not to be the police officer. All right, this is very important because ISC will try to take you to that place where you feel empowered. You get your power rush. You feel empowered. You can run into investigation on all employees just because you're the CISO. Well, guess what? You're not. All right, you're simply you're merely a consultant and you're advising senior management, and you can be in the room and ask the questions, but you can also be asked questions by your colleagues. When you call a police officer, that guy will do the job of interrogation, not you. Make sense, guys?
But why the police should come and do the interrogation? You need some kind of
if we have the suspicion
warrant
of a criminal, of a cyber crime that took place, and we want to run an investigation, okay? Part of the investigation is interrogation of the police. If they see...
But the police has to, you have to call the police and tell them, like, look, somebody hacked my system.
Yeah.
We want to start an interrogation, and then they come.
let me give an example.
They have to give they need to have a justified reason.
Absolutely. It depends on the crime that you describe to them. So let me give you an example. I work for an organization that one day, very close to the start date that I started working for the organization, we figured that we have a pedophile in our network. Someone that is actually working for the organization was a pedophile. And the reason that we knew that is that because we find out that he had access to some of the servers, and he was the admin of some servers. He hosted pedophile websites on our servers. So he used the infrastructure to run his business. Me as the CISO and a father of four, listen, man, that was bad, that was harsh. But I couldn't do anything with it, right? I couldn't do anything with it. We called law enforcement and, describing to them what we found. We didn't run an investigation, not interrogation, or anything like that. But based on the allegations that we put, they ran their own interrogation and investigation. And at the end of the day, this guy went to jail. Okay? So this is an example of interrogation. And believe me, you don't want to be in that room when this interrogation takes place. You want law enforcement to be there. They have this shield. I don't know how they do that, but they have this shield. They can see car crashes. They can see, victims of heinous crimes, and they still manage to wake up in the morning. I salute them. I don't know how they do that. I'm not able to do that at all. Let me deal with cyber crimes, but not the people's crime, those ugly things that we see. So the investigation of that forensic investigation will take place in a few steps. The bottom line is that we want to get to as much information as we can to get to the root cause of the thing that started everything, and the thing that can actually indicate that we're dealing with a cyber crime or cyber criminal. So before we start anything, we want to do the detection and containment of that cyber incident, and then report to management. As we report to management, now there's a decision that is made to run an investigation, okay? So if you are a forensic investigator and you are assigned to run an investigation, then these are the steps that you're going to take. First, you need to disclosure determination or determine if disclosure is required by law. So as I'm conducting my investigation, I need to look at the case and say, okay, this is an allegation against a pedophile, and I have to report it to law enforcement. Or this is a theft of money from our organization. I'm not going to report about it yet because this might come back and bite me, embarrass my organization, and it's probably not worth it. If it's a couple of $1,000s, I would rather settle it with the employee, fire them, deduct it from their next salary, but not file lawsuits, so this will not go public, that in my organization, somebody stole money, right? Make sense? After we decided, what we want to do with it, there's course of action. We can decide not to do anything, put surveillance, and basically collect evidence. So as we conduct the investigation, there is some sort of responsibilities. The recommended method is to always rely on external party. You cannot run forensic investigation on your own company, on your own organization, on your own users, okay? This is a big no-no. So if in questions, the CISSP questions, they ask you, you as a CISSP, you as a CISO, okay, or information security officer, is facing a potential cyber crime taking place on your network, who's to run your forensic investigation? You immediately remove yourself. Nobody from your organization should conduct this investigation, and definitely not you as the CISO, okay? We always recommend that an external party with the capabilities to run computer forensic investigation should do it for you. And the reason behind it is that you cannot be objective, okay? You cannot be non-biased if you run the investigation on your organization. Because there can always be a manager, a supervisor somewhere saying, hey, Chen said hello to this guy the other day, and this guy didn't respond. That's why Chen is trying to nail him in his investigation now. You know, there's always these allegations, there's always two sides of the equation here when we're talking about the same organization. You know, last session I mentioned the fact that you should work with consultants. The same reason is for forensic investigations. Work with external parties, and that's basically a recommendation regardless of the CISSP. Work with forensic investigators, someone that is capable of, you know, representing this investigation, and definitely not you. Even if you are cyber forensic, super smart, Superman, okay, it's not your role, don't take it, all right?
This is clear, Hen, but in the questionnaire, there was one case where something happened and we have gotten the approval from our supervisor to perform the investigation ourselves and what we should do. And actually, the right answer was that we should examine logs and But generally speaking, in the test,
if there was an answer there saying you should rule yourself out, saying you cannot be objective, I would choose that one.
But there wasn't such. The right answer was, I did it wrong, actually. The right answer was directing us to collect logs, examine such stuff.
So again, I'm saying if you can rule yourself out, that will be the first one. If there's no such answer in your question, then, you know, work with everything else that you can do. Because for sometimes the organization will say, you know what, for $2,000 theft, I'd rather you as the CISO just, you know, go over the logs, see that, you know, Chen actually did it, and let's nail the guy internally. I'm not going to waste any more money on this, you know. But for crimes that should involve the law enforcement, for example, what I described, this is big. You don't want to be part of it, right? So it depends on the scenario that is presented to you and on the answers that you have. All right. Okay, so the types of evidence that you can have a direct oral testimony by a witness, and that's the strongest one, okay? It has to be real, tangible, object, physical evidence, something that you can present in court, documentary, demonstrative, or the best practice for evidence is to limit the potential of alteration, okay? You don't want somebody to mess up with the potential of modification or alteration. And also, all evidence must be collected legally. You cannot hack somebody's computer because hacking is against the law. Even if you say, okay, hacking their computer, hacking their phone, all right, provided me with this evidence, even though we do have a case in Israel where a journalist hacked one parliament member phone and presented that in the press, and you know there's a whole investigation around it. Say that from the beginning, the argument against it is that from the beginning, this evidence was collected wrongfully, not legally, because that phone was hacked, and it's not the right way to collect evidence. So the rule of hearsay, you know, let's say that we hear from someone else that, you know, something this and that happened. So the rule of hearsay is a very, very low effective type of evidence, unless we have the documents that can support the hearsay evidence, and we have someone from IT or some custodian attesting that this records testifies that this records or certifies as to their authenticity. So they testify on the authenticity of those what we call hearsay and documents that support that hearsay. So the hearsay is not a good evidence. You want to avoid that. And now we're looking at the chain of evidence. That means that, you know, from this point onward, you want to make sure that the evidence is not tampered with, is not altered, as mentioned before. So you need to make sure that you have accountability for the evidence. You have someone that keeps an eye on the evidence. You want to protect that evidence. You want to put it in a safe, make sure it's not exposed to heat or magnetic waves or magnetic fields that will probably tamper with it. And you want to maintain a probable chain of custody. You want to present to court that this evidence was kept in the right order all the way from A to Z until presented to court. This is very, very hard. And to add to the fact that we don't have global rules or global laws for computer crimes, which we saw in domain 1, this just adds on that weight that we need to bear, you need to carry when you go to this, taking someone to court based on a computer crime. So again, the evidence, in order for it to be admissible in court, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be reliable, and you need to show that the life cycle of the evidence was kept from A to Z, and was kept all the way. The thing is that during the evidence collection, we probably collected some evidence that is based on the property of the criminal. We probably seized a laptop or a computer or a device or a phone or something. So at the end of the investigation, we have to respect the right for property and return this property to the owner, even if the owner is the criminal itself. Okay? So we will return the laptop to that criminal after a proper investigation and a proper prosecution in court. Does that make sense, guy?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a kind of a dry material here, pretty much like parts of domain 4. It's pretty straightforward. There's 1 and 0s here, not too many areas of argument. So yes, for this part of the book, this part of the exam, you will probably need to memorize the sequence and what comes before that and all the glossary for this chapter. But it's good to understand that there can also be some scenarios here which you can rule yourself out from an investigation simply because you're not objective as you need to be, and the chain of custody needs to take place and how it's done. This can also be a part of the scenario-based questions that I can anticipate in your exam. Are we all good, guys? How are you holding up? All right. So what I would like you to do now is I would like you to start practicing the full CISSP exam, all right? The all domains in pairs, all right? So 20 questions, take them between now and 5 o'clock. You still have 1 hour, we're still here, choose your pairs and work together. You can work on one user and then work on the other user for your second trial. But take the full CISSP exam for all 8 domains, okay? Even though we didn't cover domain 8, I want it to be, on the back of your head before tomorrow morning. Is that a deal?
Yeah.
We need to do 1 full test or 2 full tests?
Not full test, the 20 questions for all domains.
Okay.
Okay, 2 exams of the 20 questions. Let's say that you work with Valentino, so 1 under your username and 1 under Valentino's username.
Can we not just do the all around test?
No, not now. I don't want to do it. It's a 3 hours test, man.
No, there's another one in the class center that was also like 20 or 40 minutes.
That's a 50 question. That
Yes.
would be an hour test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want the short ones. I want the 20 questions. It's really important. 20 questions will give you the idea of what 10 minutes can be worth in the CISSP. Because at the end of the day, your pace will probably get you to 20 questions in 10 minutes. All right? As you control it. Think about it. 20 questions in 10 minutes, that means that in less than an hour, you can complete your CISSP. Okay?
Yeah.
You still have time. Time is great in CISSP. And given the fact that you need to spend 3 minutes on every question of the first 10 to 15, as mentioned in the beginning, you know, probably an hour and a half will be sufficient for you to complete your CISSP. All right? Okay, guys. Let's go. Let's start practicing. And I want to see the results. I want to work with the results. As you've seen, the results are very, very important for the analysis and for the feedback that I can give you. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing your results after today.
Okay.
All right? All right, cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So give me a howl if you need my help. All right?
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, guys.
Cool. So bye.